Alright, for today's lesson, this is lesson 3.3, we're going to solve a quadratic equation using square roots. Here are some steps that we're going to repeat. We're going to get the squared term all by itself. Now the squared term may be an x or it could be another variable. And sometimes we're going to get a binomial squared. Binomial means two terms and they're going to be inside of parentheses with a little 2 on the outside. We're going to get that by itself. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And there's always going to be two answers, a positive and a negative. So we're going to use this plus minus symbol. And always go back and kind of check your answers to see how you did. So let's take a look at this first one. I need to get the x squared all by itself, so I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. Alright, now that I've got it all by itself, we take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus minus sign. You're going to hear me say that over and over. So this gives me x equals, well, this negative, when I bring it out, it makes it imaginary. So this is plus or minus 2i as my answer. All right, problem number 2. We need to get the squared term all by itself, so we're going to subtract 3 first. And we have 1/2 x squared is equal to 9. Now to get rid of this fraction in front, you multiply by the reciprocal. So 2 over 1. So that leaves me with x squared equals 18. Square term's all by itself, so we take the square root of both sides and don't forget the plus minus sign. So we have x equals. Now this one is just a square root of 18, so you could type it in your calculator. Don't forget plus minus though. Alright, there's our first two problems. Let's keep going. And these notes pages are on the blog. You could print them out or you could just copy them on your own sheet of paper. Now these two problems are very different, but kind of the same. There's both parentheses on them, but only one of them is a binomial being squared, and that's number 4. It has parentheses with a 2 on the outside. This one is trying to be tricky. The 2's on the inside, so this problem is special. It's the only one where we actually start off by distributing the 2. Alright, on this one I need to get my squared terms on the same side, so I'm going to have to add x squared. So I have 3x squared minus 10 equals negative 1. To get the squared term by itself, I have got to get rid of that negative 10. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. 3x squared is equal to 9. X squared needs to be divided by 3. So that I have x squared is equal to 3. Excuse me. Now that x squared is all by itself, we can take the square root of both sides. And don't forget the plus minus. So I've run out of space here. I want to put it here. X equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Alright, now this one is that binomial squared where the little 2 is on the outside of the parentheses. So our job is to get all of this by itself. To do that, we've got to get rid of this minus 1 first. Make sure that's your first step. Now get rid of the 1/3 by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal. So I have x plus 4 squared is equal to 18. Now my binomial squared is all by itself. So I take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus minus. When you take the square root of a binomial squared, it cancels out that squared term, leaving you with what's inside the parentheses. You will no longer need the parentheses. Over here, I still have the plus minus, and square root of 18 is 3 square root of 2. Now, this has one more step before I can get x by itself, and that is subtracting the 4. Last unit, we talked about when can you add or subtract radicals, and you can only add or subtract radicals when they have the same radicand. This negative 4 does not have a radical sign, so I cannot combine it with a 3. So it's simply negative 4 plus or minus 3 square root of 2. Alright, 2 more problems on this side, and then we've got a few on the back. Another binomial squared, so we need to get rid of the 4. To get rid of the 4, we use division. So I have x plus 5 squared is equal to negative 16. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus minus. These cancel out. You no longer need the parentheses, so it's x plus 5. Plus or minus the square root, this negative comes out as an I, so this is plus minus 4i. One more step to get the variable by itself. I got to move that plus 5 by subtracting it. And again, I cannot combine these two items because I can only combine imaginaries with other imaginaries. So this is x equal to -5 plus or minus 4i. Problem number 6, we need to subtract 338 on both sides of the equal sign. So we have 2x squared is equal to -338. Divide both sides by 2. And now we can take the square root of both sides. So I would get x is equal to, okay, here's, don't forget your plus minus. So I've got plus minus, bring this out as an I, so this is plus or minus 13i. On the back, same thing, just more practice with what you were doing. We need to get rid of the 5, so we're going to divide both sides by 5. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. When you take the square root, we're left with x minus 4 equals plus or minus 5. We've almost got the variable by itself, so we need to add 4 to both sides. So x equals 4 plus minus 5. However, these are like terms. These are like terms. So this plus minus is a shortcut way of getting two possible answers. So I'm going to split it up. It's 4 plus 5 if you were to go across the top. If you go across the bottom, it's 4 minus 5. These can be simplified. So there are two answers to this problem. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 minus 5 is -1. Because they were like terms. So that's a special case. Over here, add 3 to both sides. 1/7 x squared equals 7. To get rid of 1/7, you multiply by the reciprocal. So we have x squared is equal to 49. Take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus minus. X equals plus or minus 7. Problem number 9, we're going to get rid of that. Minus 2. -3/5 x squared is equal to -3. We're going to get rid of this fraction and get rid of the negative sign at the same time. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal and multiply by a negative. If we didn't multiply by the negative, your squared term would have still been negative, and you can't have a negative squared term. So I get a positive squared term is equal to, those cancel, leaving you with 5. Take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus minus sign. There we go. X equals plus or minus the square root of 5. All right, last one. Again, you can't leave the squared term negative, so we're going to have to divide both sides by -9. So x squared is equal to -27. Take the square root, plus minus, don't forget that. X is equal to, so negative is going to bring out an I, but then in your calculator you can do square root of 27 and it'll simplify that part for you. So plus or minus 3i square root of 3. All right, we're all done with your notes. I'll see you in class. Make sure you ask me questions if you got stuck on a particular problem. See you then.